Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mythic Mel on Awakening Airwaves. I am your host, Melinda, Mythic Mel herself, and in this podcast, I invite the beautiful muses to sing for us once more of Greek myth. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mythic Mel on Awakening Airwaves. Mythic Mel is about sharing what I love, connecting it to Greek mythology, and shedding light on the process of awakening through actual myth and mundane matters as well. For my first guest on the podcast, I wanted to bring in my most magical, oldest, bestest friend, because her work fascinates me and our love lights up my life. And this is a very wise woman who happens to be a midwife. She is an expert in holding space as new life comes into the world. So what better person to talk about the Greek origin myth of Hesiod's theogony than Éirinn Burke Lance. And I'm just going to start with reading a little bit about her. Éirinn was born in New York City. She had the good fortune of a difficult birth. After many hours of a long labor, her young mother, exhausted but defiantly against having a C-section, Éirinn came into the world, pulled up by forceps and looking up instead of down like most babies. She would spend her young life growing up in a hippie artist-parent household in New York City in the 1970s, living in an old carriage house from the 1800s with her parents and a roommate. The rent was expensive at $225 per month. It would be another 11 years before she had her next experience with birth. Éirinn was 11 years old when Brendan was born at the childbearing center in New York City with a nurse midwife. 4 years later, she would witness the birth of her youngest brother, Guy, at the same birth center. These experiences with birth informed her eventual career as a nurse midwife. As a floundering senior at Smith College majoring in religion and biblical literature, Éirinn attended a January term course on midwifery and home birth at nearby Hampshire College. In this month, she started to think about becoming a midwife herself. However, having no work experience with anything medical, she decided to return to the childbearing center in New York and worked there as an assistant midwife. Life and a boyfriend took her across the country to San Francisco. She received her master's degree in nurse midwifery in 1998 from UCSF after the birth of her own daughter, Story. Story was born vaginally as a footling breech at UCSF at a time when breech birth was moving toward C-section. Starting in 1998, Éirinn had the honor to care for women across their lifespans in clinics, as well as attending births in homes, birth centers, and hospitals. Her son, Éirinn, was born at home with midwives in 2000. In 2005, Éirinn was part of the founding of a group prenatal care program centering pregnancy at Marin Maternity Services. In 2011, Éirinn joined Marin Health and became the OB program manager for Marin Community Clinics for 12 years, continuing centering pregnancy in this new clinic setting. Starting in the late 2010s, Éirinn had the privilege of starting a challenging journey of menopause, followed by a breast cancer journey in 2024. In 2025, she retired from birth work. Her professional life has pivoted to focusing on the care of non-pregnant women with a focus on menopause. In 2026, she will begin a journey to become a professional homeopath, which is a whole nother story, and we'll have her back to talk about that another time. But with that being said, welcome to Mythic Mel, Éirinn. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. How are you?
Oh my God. Wow, my heart is so full right now. My eyes have tears in them. Our journey has been profound because Melinda, you came into my life when I was, I think, 11, and it was right around the time that, I had my first experience with birth outside of my own birth, right? And that it was a time our friendship was a birth, uh, an incredible birth, as I referred to us as our young goddess selves. Um, and I'm just honored to be here and excited.
I'm so excited. We are no strangers to talking together. We started at 11. I think we had those marathon conversations on the phone when we were 11, like 3 hours, 4 hours. Even after spending the day together, we'd come home, glue ourselves to the telephone, and just be doing homework, talking on the phone. I don't even know what we did, but we talked for
We talked
hours.
a lot, and we had sleepovers, and yeah, I was just,
Yeah. Yeah, and as I reflect, I mean, we've done a lot of reflecting together because we talk every new and full moon pretty much, and we
mhm,
have for the last few years.
mhm.
And so we've really gotten to get back to that premenopausal state now that we're postmenopausal, which is so fun. And oddly enough, if we think numerologically about our ages that we're turning this year, 5 plus 6, it's
Oh my
11.
God,
Like,
you're right. Wow. I mean, it's such an interesting stage, right? Of it's really a second adolescence, but better, I think.
I think we know a lot more. We can appreciate a lot more. We have more kind of, we have better, I would say, mastery. I don't want to say control because we'll talk about control. That's a double-sided sword. But we have at least a greater understanding of what we're made up of and how to navigate our lives and bring more harmony into our lives and just how to direct our energies appropriately, because I think both of us have been through many, many different things. Obviously, we all have. And what I'm excited to talk about is like not just how you have held space for actual birth in your work, and I really want to hear about all of that, but also both of us, I think, have been through a kind of second birth of ourselves in terms of like a little bit of a spiritual awakening for and when we get on this path, that's really what it is about. It's like birthing ourselves in this new way with this new understanding. And I kind of want to hear from you about how birth of actual like flesh babies and that whole scene, which is messy and sacred, is also a really great mirror for the second birthing of ourselves. I kind of want to get into how what we can learn about birth and second birth awakening from your kind of midwife perspective. We don't have to get right into that, but that's one of the questions I have for you. And the other ones, I'm just going to kind of lay them out and let your mind and heart start to process, and you can come back with whatever you're feeling from what I say. But the other question that came to mind for you is what does nature teach us about our birthing bodies, that we tend to forget later? Things that may make life a little easier as we navigate our second births or navigate our life. Um, yeah, so what comes up for you around those kinds of concepts?
Um, I think what I go to, and you and I have talked about this a lot, but I think about labor and the uterus is contracting and then expanding. It relaxes and expands. And how so much of how we, I think, grow and change in our lives involves just series of like contractions and expansions. And that when we're in a contraction, it's uncomfortable. It's hard. Um, we often fight it. It happens for women in labor, and then in life when we are dealing with things that are really, really hard. And I know I've personally really fought against some contractions in my life and wrangled with them. And so labor and the privilege of going through a labor where you actually, you know, can sense what's happening in your body. And, if you're having a baby and you may need to choose to get some sort of anesthesia, and that is really so okay. I'm not telling people they can't do that, but just allowing yourself to have those sensations and being aware of like, oh, wow, I can feel this contraction. And then the expansion does become this larger metaphor for our lives around birthing ourselves. When I was kind of reflecting on my bio, one of the things I realized was like, yeah, my actual birth was difficult. And then this second rebirth that I went through was also really difficult and painful and hard and some deep contractions that um oof, um yeah, they took me to some dark places. And I think that, for every woman that I've witnessed in birth, when you, when they, and interesting, and I'm going to speak to women who do it without, an epidural anesthesia where they feel, inevitably, they always hit this point where they say, I can't do this. I can't do it anymore. And that's really the point where it's about to happen. Like it's all that baby's about to be born. They've hit, I think we call it like transition. Um, and yeah, you're just at that threshold where it's like it is the most intense, but you are just right there. And what you really need in those moments is other, people around you who say, yeah, you can do this, and we're here, and we're going to support you through it, but you can do this, and you can do this. Um, and then they do. And I've seen it again and again and again and again. And it's beautiful and such a privilege and so hard. And so I think in those moments, when women have had the privilege of experiencing that, they learn so much about themselves. And it's something you can't learn without having to go through it. Um, and not to diminish anybody who chooses to, have anesthesia during their birth in the form of epidural, or there's other things that we can help support people. I think that sometimes we need that, and that is so totally okay. Um, and uh, but that journey of just like feeling the sense of the contraction of that uterus, and then there's a relaxation and expansion. It just has become such a huge metaphor for things in life. And watching, the trajectory of my own life and then friends or family or my children. I see that they similarly will just, there are times of deep contraction and they are hard and they are painful. And we often resist them.
Yeah.
And when we can allow ourselves to be within that uncomfortable space, as uncomfortable as it is, and just be with it and not resist it. Um, that's the point where we actually, I think, transitioned into expansion. And I felt that with myself. And you've walked with this journey with me. It comes up for me around my breast cancer journey because there was a lot of resistance. I was in deep contraction. And when I allowed myself to really just sort of relax into like being in this state of contraction, suddenly like expansion happened. I had breakthroughs that allowed me to continue to walk the journey, and it actually led to a much more expansive journey for myself. Um, but it's almost like the contraction is necessary.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to say about I learned something and I can't remember. I want to credit somebody, but I can't remember the right person. I think even Michael Mead, who talked about a caterpillar going through the metamorphosis of becoming a butterfly. And one of the things that he said that was so like helpful was that part of the work of that caterpillar becoming a butterfly is that they actually resist going into that cocoon stage. There's a point of resistance, and it's almost like that resistance is a necessary part of the change, which is just really, I think it's satisfying to know that it's actually okay to resist. Like you're not wrong to resist. I think I've intellectualized and thought, oh, you should just be able to give over and relax and meditate through it, But no, actually, part of this process is like I had to go through the resistance in order to then be able to experience the expansion. So it just it comes up in so many ways. And yeah, watching and being with women in labor again and again and again, it's been an amazing metaphor for this thing that happens actually in our lives in so many different forms. We experience it all the time. We are laboring as humans. We are laboring. We are in labor. We're going through contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion. And yes, a birth and a labor is an encapsulated sort of version of that, but those contraction expansions essentially is life.
That is life. That is so beautiful to hear. And it really, I think, will validate a lot of people's, experiences of resisting things, of, even saying no, and then being able to trust that the darknesses they're experiencing and the difficulties that they're experiencing, like they're part of nature and they will shift with in divine timing, in biological timing, and that's just the way things work. It's contraction, expansion, like you say, this energy. And what also I'm struck by when I hear you is like the work of midwife attending someone in their discomfort. It takes a very particular kind of presence and holding space for that is a very wise lesson for those of us even attending people in their discomfort not in the labor room. So can you talk a little bit about that, and like if you've learned, has the labor room taught you things about how to operate outside of it in terms of witnessing people in their pains and discomforts?
Um, um, yeah, being able to be with someone when they're uncomfortable and just being able to be with them and not feeling the need to change it. And I can say like I do this so much better taking care of women than I just think about with my family. I'm not as good at it, and I've had to learn to be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just it's okay just to be with them and their discomfort and not have the need to fix it. Um, and it is a really hard one, I think, especially in our modern world, because we are so used to being able to fix things. Our modern world has become in so many ways really frictionless. And so when we are confronted with a situation where there's friction and discomfort, our instinct, because of how we're wired right now, is to be like, okay, how can I fix it? And really often in labor and birth, the labor and birth goes very normally, but with somebody experiencing this discomfort, and your role really is not to fix anything, it's just to be with them and support them and, encourage them. Um, and yeah, so in terms of thinking about how, people in our lives may be experiencing times of discomfort, and we may want to, our instinct may be to like fix it, but really, start by just being. just being with them. And then it may become clear together where like, oh, maybe this is where I need to go to help me through this contraction right now. Because like, we encourage women who are able to get up and move around, like the more you can move often helps. And women can often figure out in their own bodies, like, oh, this movement helps. It helps me to be up and walking around, or it helps me to like lunge, or, it helps me to get on my hands and knees and rock my hips back and forth, or it helps me to dance and move my body, and so allowing ourselves to be with people when they are struggling and just be with them. Sometimes what happens is that's where the magic is right? Of you realizing like, oh, this movement, this change, this direction, if I go this way, if I think about it differently, um, it will help me through this contraction, this
Yeah.
time in my life where I am in contraction.
Yeah.
So
That's,
yeah, yeah,
and as you're talking, I'm thinking about part of our path along this sort of spiritual growth path is being able to be our own midwife, being able to witness our own selves in our own discomforts. Like that is the real magic of when we figure out how do we witness ourselves in labor and have our strategies for soothing and, and seeking support to empower ourselves and see ourselves with compassion in that struggle.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in a sense, becoming our own midwives. And then just like recognizing um, in so many ways, we all hold space as a midwife in our lives, probably. Like we have shown up for people and held space for them as a midwife would, just being with them, holding space, witnessing, loving them through whatever contracted space they're in. Because that's really what it's about too. And definitely holding it for ourselves. I mean, part of my spiritual journey has for sure been just holding myself with deep compassion, like I've held other people with deep compassion, but for so many years, for some reason, wasn't able to show up for myself in that way. And that does feel in some ways this birth phase has been about this new birth phase has been about yeah, like just being with myself, holding myself as I would hold others.
Yeah.
Compassion.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
it's no, it's incredible work you've done, Erin. I can't even imagine. I wish I were a fly on the wall watching you hold space for like these incredible, like magic moments when a new life emerges, you know? Um, Tell me a little bit about back when you were studying to be a midwife, like what was some of the wisdom that was imparted to you? Is there anything that comes to mind that you were taught that actually, maybe at the time you didn't quite relate to, but then over time it kind of flowered and blossomed?
Um, I remember one midwife very early on, and it's really interesting because I will say we were sort of taught things medically that then I had, midwives who were very wise and very experienced who helped redirect some of that medical learning. One had to do with around cutting the umbilical cord, because we were kind of taught medically if it's you have a baby born. Many times, probably a third of the time, there's the cord. I have my cord here wrapped around my neck so that I can demonstrate. If it's really tight and you can't sort of reduce it over the baby's head, that you should cut it. And this is actually, baby's head is just out of the mother, but the body is still inside. So you're cutting the cord right there. And I had a situation as a student like this, and my midwife at the time was like, "No, never cut the cord." And I was like, "Okay." And she showed me how to do something called somersaulting that baby out so that the cord stays intact, and you essentially keep that baby's head as close to the woman's body, her perineum, as possible, and allows that baby to be born, cord intact. Because at that point, the cord is the still has the oxygenated blood from the placenta that is pulsing through it and is really allowing that baby at the time after birth to transition. And transitioning from being inside to being outside takes a little bit of time, takes a few minutes. This baby is, that's huge, right? They've gone from the womb and now they're outside in the world and there's air and it's colder. And, unfortunately, what we see reflected in media is like often a baby screaming immediately or being whacked on its butt to to like, yeah, scream. But they don't need that. They just actually need to be right on the mother, skin to skin, that cord intact pulsing, and allowing that baby to take its first breaths, open its eyes, and just transition. And that's a point of like, I usually just put a hand on that baby. I might rub its feet a little bit to help stimulate it. And then, in most cases, those babies transition beautifully and don't need anything else. So that was a piece of beautiful wisdom that I got early on. And so that's a whole trajectory we can go around down intact umbilical cords. Another one, and I feel like this one, I'm not sure where this came from because I don't remember it coming from a specific person, but I'm a midwife who loves a slow crowning of the baby's head. The crowning is the time when the baby his head is coming through the vagina. And this is the woman's body stretching around that baby's head. And I'm a fan of the slow crowning as long as this baby can tolerate it, because it's allowing this woman's body to just slowly stretch and open. Because the vagina is amazing. It accommodates, babies upwards of 10 pounds sometimes, usually not, but and it's designed to stretch and to open. And I'm a fan of it because I think it helps keep a woman's body intact, which means less tearing. Um, and also it is, moves at a pace that the woman's body is designed to move. Um, and so that's a wisdom that I'm not sure where it came through, but I know I often, some nurses really struggled with me because that was part of my practice of like really, they would be like, that's a really long crowning. And I was like, and I'm constantly aware of like, how's mother coping? How's baby coping? We have monitoring the baby's heart rate. And if a baby isn't coping, I will move more quickly to accelerate a birth. But if everybody's coping fine, I just, allow the woman to guide it as much as she can, or I guide her if that's indicated, and allow this baby to slowly, allow her mother's body or to open, and allow that baby to come through into the world in as gentle a way as possible. Birth is messy and sometimes it's traumatic. Um, and I, at some point in my career too, also had the wisdom of letting go of a perfect birth. There can be, and I've dealt with this because I've been issues with perfectionism of like imagining that there's this perfect way babies need to be born. And I think there is an ideal way, Ideally, yes. The mother should feel really well supported. This is a baby that she welcomes in to the world because it's a wanted child. Unfortunately, those things don't always line up. And that's okay. It's actually okay. Um, and being okay with, yeah, not every birth is going to be ideal or perfect. Um, and that's okay. And we can help support that child, the mother, the birthing person. I want to be inclusive here, I realized. Um, and just support them through their journey, however it is. Because sometimes as we know, stuff happens differently than we hope for. And that is true with birth too. And we should really not try to create perfect birth or ideal birth. We should be with the birth we are with and support that family, those people that, as well as we can within the circumstances that they are in.
Yeah.
That's what's most important. That's what's most important.
I love that you really honored your own sense of how a slow crowning is going to be kind of part of the dance that is going to be the most beneficial for both the baby and the mother's body, and having that patience to just observe, and trust that it's all going according to kind of divine biological plan. Like we are designed for this, and we are, when we push and force and rush things that are not ready to be birthed, sometimes that's not always of benefit to one or the other. It kind of takes things out of balance a little bit. But it's interesting, I mean, just sort of weaving in now a little bit of the Greek myth origin story. It just strikes me because there's a lot of mess in the beginning of the Greek myth of the beginning of the cosmos. There's like out of chaos, and there's earth, and then there's sky and ocean and mountain and sea, and then there's all these creatures like the 100-handed, 50-headed monster, and there's Cyclops, and there's just like this incredible energy is unleashed at the beginning of things. This all this new stuff that you just is sort of out of balance, that's like out there in the world, unleashed when this new birth happens. And there is blood and sacrifice in the Greek myth. There was the Kronos like cut off his father's testicles from that blood drops that went into the sea. Foam was formed that combined with the blood and the salt water.
I've heard women say that to their husbands. To cut off your testicles. It's
I mean,
true.
it's mythic. It's from the myth, so they're right in keeping. And out of the froth is born Aphrodite, or Venus, is born from all of that, from the struggle, from the sacrifice, from the blood, from all of the mess, is the goddess of love.
Mm.
So can you reflect a little for me about that?
Yes. Oh my God, that describes birth right in and of itself. Just like it is messy, like if you have the privilege to witness a woman give birth who doesn't have anesthesia, what you described is it. It's frothy and bloody and testicles cut off and just, wrangling. And yes, there's this whole like struggle and there's water and then there's like fire, right? Because the woman, like, labor is hard work and it's like sweaty. Um, and it's, takes a long time. Um, and there's a lot of wrangling and and then of course it's like, from the waters. So what it was that Aphrodite came from the waters, right? Yeah. So you think of the waters of the womb, like waters break. Babies, they don't necessarily come quickly, but sometimes they come quickly after the waters break. Um, so it sounds like the Greeks had witnessed birth and they were like, all right, this is how Aphrodite came in. And they witnessed women like looking at their husbands like with anger because they were like, this is awful. And, I'm going to take your testicles off for this. Um, yeah, it's
Mm.
everything, right? And of course, it's like, it's this gamut of emotion too, because there's like you are all in an altered state, in a completely altered state, and I know you've experienced it and I've experienced it. And there's like anger. I can remember I got really angry at my midwife at my during my labor with my son because I didn't have anesthesia. And anger came up, and I was like, stop listening to his heartbeat. It's like annoying me. It was what she's supposed to be doing, you know. Um, Thankfully, she was doing it
Mm.
exactly what she's supposed to be doing. But yeah, anger comes up, and then of course, baby born and like relief, and then like, often joy, not always, but often joy in that moment. So yeah, that the Greeks, they hit it right on the nose.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you might see something about real birth in that part of the story. But that notion of sacrifice kind of being part of the birthing process, like things that are killed off, or the notion of like birth and death being kind of part of the same coin kind of came through. I know we've talked about that, and you've shared with me some wisdom about that. Can you talk a little bit more about what is dying as birth is coming?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know why this chokes me up, but it does. And actually, this is a wisdom from a midwife. It was one of the midwives, Maria Finnegan Hall. She and I were uh, students together in midwifery school, but she had been a home birth midwife for many years, so came in with tremendous wisdom. And I can remember, and she was at the birth of Eamon, and she described how when a baby is born, death is in the room at the same time. And that always stuck with me. And it's not the same specter of death as we imagine of like Grim Reaper. I think it's more really about, what is dying for, kind of everybody in as that birth is happening, right? To that whole family unit, to the birthing person, right? If it's their first baby, they have gone from not having ever had children to suddenly now they are a parent, a mother in some capacity, and that life before them is died. Same thing for, other parents in the room, other family members. If it's a sibling, then they've gone from having however many children, so they're added another into the family, and the siblings that came before now have this other sibling in their lives. And so that life before has died, you know. And then if we think about for ourselves, just in our life journeys, how, we have had to go through many births and deaths in sort of recreations of, what our lives looked like before, and then maybe we've had different work lives, and maybe we've had different relationship lives, and there has been transitions where we have died and been born again, right? Um, and so, yeah, death is always there. And death is always there. And we just don't, um, I think we think of it from this standpoint of like a grim reaper. But I remember I have to shout out to my kids' preschool teachers, because they had a whole thing where they were teaching children, preschoolers about death. And and part of it was just walking around and seeing things that were dead, like, right? Like there are leaves on the ground that have died, or maybe like a bug on the ground has died, or maybe a mouse you find has died. And just recognizing like there's a whole cycle that happens all the time of life and death, right? And that part of, new life being able to come forth is because there is death. Like death is really a necessary part of this cycle for us. And just acknowledging like how from a young age, we actually really should learn about like, oh yeah, there is constant death and birth. It's happening for us all the time. But yeah, it's super profound in the moment of a new baby coming into the world, of having that life before that baby there's a death there.
Yeah, it makes me think about how we as a culture do try to, in some ways, mask death. You know, we don't want to think about it. We don't show it. We don't talk about it that much. We don't contemplate it. And many other wisdom traditions, there is that kind of part of spiritual practice is really contemplating the lifespan, including the transition from our earthly form into whatever it is one believes, which I think there's a oneness that we return to on some level. And there's also maybe not a lot of sharing around the messiness of birth sometimes. And just like, you know, how have you experienced that? Have you experienced people who've come in really knowing nothing, like mothers to be really knowing very little about what's to come?
In terms of the experience of labor,
Yeah, in labor and birth and
um, yes.
like how can we better maybe educate people about this thing that happens to all of us from where we all came from, you know, like what are the energy what energies are present in that experience? How can we
Yeah. Um, Interesting question. I think actually I would go to preschool and start teaching about children about birth and death. And also because we fear death, right? Death comes with a lot of fear. Um, and being able to support that from a young age of teaching, like, oh yeah, this is going to be going to be a part of life always, and just like to notice, like, how is it showing up in your life? And then as you get older, probably in a age appropriate way, is like, yeah, how is birth and I really do think we have to start this very young.
yeah,
Because part of it, and the reason that I'm saying this is because when I think about women who I've supported in labor, I've had this incredible privilege of caring for women from very different socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. Um, you know, very Western privileged people to people who are, here in our country, undocumented, and culturally, primarily Latina. And their way of holding space in the world is so different than how, I mean, I have learned so much from them. I choke up from it because they hold space differently. And I, brought up in a very Western mindset, so appreciate their ability to hold space and time. Um, because I think they almost come from a space of being way more fully within their entire selves, spiritually, bodily, emotionally, intellectually. Whereas, being Western, I was taught like this, my brain is the most important thing and this will rule everything. And so I was really only working with sort of like one aspect of myself, which is not very well grounded, frankly. Whereas I feel like when I take care of these women who come and they are really coming from their culture, their sense of like how to hold themselves in space and time is just way more grounded. They're using the breadth of their capacities. Um, and so when I think about how to support, everyone, men and women, because men journey through birth with their partners. You have to start young. You have to start talking about birth and death from a young age, and then also start talking about how to help all of us really be fully within ourselves, in our bodies, in our emotions, in our intellect, and then in our spirit, whatever that means to you. Because I don't come at from a religious standpoint, but more that like we are all connected energetically, and and then deeply connected into this very energetic being of ourselves. And what does it mean to be connected into that energetic being of ourselves, really fully and wholly? And I really don't feel like I figured that out until the last couple of years. And I would have loved to have known it from a young age, you know. And
Mhm.
so I see this as something that it actually starts at birth.
Yeah. Yeah. And it would help if the culture at large kind of also supported it, which, hopefully we can hold that vision for our culture, to have its own kind of awakening in that way.
Yeah.
And, because I think we as a culture do promote kind of ideas about perfection and control of messy things,
You don't
which
like
are,
messy.
we don't like messy things, and yet we are human flesh and leaking tears, leaking, raging. I mean, all kinds of things like raging around. We're Life is messy, and
Life
we're
is messy.
pretending it's not. And
Yes.
body,
Everything comes out in birth, out of every orifice.
yeah, yeah. No, I think, yeah, back into the myth that is like that, like the blood and the blood mixed with everything, and out emerges love. So there is seated within the mess is love, and what we have trouble with, I think, is seeing the love that is present in all things, even the messes, even the hard times, that its love still is there in that energy, that pulse is still there, and we just, learning how to midwife our own spirit, in a sense, our own self, is so helpful. I don't think it's possible for us to come out knowing everything. I think life is supposed to be this journey, and, you and I both have learned so much along the way. There is no way, it's almost like we're designed to evolve as we do, however it is, to wake up to our life in a new way. It just comes often with blood, sweat, and tears on some level, often with challenge. But I feel like your experience in the birth room really does help us have a perspective on how to hold space for suffering overall, and to know that love is present in all of these difficult moments.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's true. We really, it should always be about birthing love, right? And I think that the birth of a child, so often, if it's a wanted child like that, is because oh my God, you just fall in love with this new incredible being, right? But that actually every time the goal for birth for ourselves, whatever it means in the path of our journey, right? As we can go through the contractions and the labors of challenging times. On the other side, we really want to birth into love.
Yeah, and that like what you talked about, that there are children who do come into the world without that sense of being held in love necessarily. And that is, I just want to circle back to that and acknowledge that and to hold space for that and send love out to those beings who really have a harder journey at the start than to like figure out ways um, to come into their power, come into their worthiness, to understand, and then to be, that they are love still. And it makes me think about the energies present at birth. I mean, you talked about death being in the room in a sense at birth, but there's so many energies, and there's energies of family systems, and there's all these energies present that weave into the energy body of the baby, it feels like. Do you ever get a sense of that when you're holding space there as a midwife, or even in your own experience of your own birth?
Definitely in caring for women in pregnancy, because I will say that so many women will um, they may deal with some struggles in their pregnancy. Maybe they're having going through relationship conflict or something. And they'll find themselves emotionally being upset or angry. And they really worry, like, how does this affect my baby? Because they're holding this baby in their energy body, right? And what I've said to them is I say, yeah, your baby is affected. It's true. You're not wrong. But I also tell them, like, this is life. This is the introduction to life. And what I've encouraged them to do is I say, have a conversation with your baby. Tell your baby, like, oh, I'm really going through something and it's really hard right now, but this is not your fault. But I'm struggling and I get sad or I get angry or, and just let them know, you love them and that this is not their fault. And um but you're there and you're present with them just to help them soothe the mom in her heart and body and mind that, yeah, you're going to confront stuff with this isn't the last time you're going to confront stuff in your life with your child that's going to be challenging, right? As we know, people have children and then they may go through divorce and life changes. And man, that's really hard. And often people are really worried, like, oh, how is this affecting my children? Which is a total valid worry. But of course, it's also okay to be like, yeah, this is life. And I love you and I'm here with you. And this is hard. And we are here and it's not your fault. And we'll get through this, you know? So there is so much, and women know this instinctively as they're carrying a life in their body that, yeah, what's going on for them is affecting their baby. And it's how do we help support ourselves to help support this being, and let this being know that this is hard. I am struggling, but I'm here with you and I love you, and this is not your fault. And
That's
I feel like that's the most important message to convey.
that is so beautiful a message, and it also is, I mean, at the heart of it is really being able to acknowledge the truth of what we're feeling at any given time and to be able to express it and have it be okay and not repress and suppress. So it's really enabling all of us, like as humans, that ability to be able to just pause, notice what we're feeling, acknowledge it, and even speak it out loud and say, okay, this is what is, and it is okay, and we'll get through this, rather than pretend it's not happening and suppress and repress, which that's one of the things I thought about in terms of the Greek origin myth, because one of the things that happened when Uranos or Uranus or Uranus, the sky basically, had heard in a prophecy that one of his children would kill him or cut off his balls, which did happen. Um, and so, in an attempt to prevent that from happening, he swallowed them as they came out. So he just tried to take life and put it down and hide it away, or like some were buried deep, deep down into the deepest recesses of the earth. And this has kind of felt like a very strong metaphor to me of like that natural attempt for some to really push down what's coming up and what wants to be born. And you just say no, and fight against what is. And then what happens when Kronos comes and does cut off his father's genitalia, then goes and frees all of the other children, and they are brought out into life because that was, they are living their best Cyclops life, their best hundred-handed monster life, whatever it is, but like all can be allowed to express as it is, even if it looks like a cyclops or and I mean energetically,
Yeah.
metaphorically, even if things are like feel wild and weird and it's impossible to let them out. No, let them be free, and they also can be loved into, and we can live with it all. We can deal with all the energies that
And did you say it was Kronos that did the
yes,
cutting?
Kronos did the cutting of
Okay.
of his father.
I want to, so Kronos is time. Am I correct?
Well,
Okay.
there is,
Correlated.
yes, they're correlated. They're not, there's a lot of debate about that. The god of, there's sort of two different energies, but yes, we can talk about it because it does sound like it, and but it's not specifically that in the myth. But there is a Saturn quality, which is also connected to restriction and time. And so, yes, let's go with it.
And the only reason I sort of point that out is that I actually feel like, the uh Uranus, Uranus suppressing, right? The demons, it sounds like. And I want to give space to like allowing us to do that because sometimes we aren't ready to deal with our demons. And so the coping mechanism may be to suppress them. And that Chronos, the timing, that somehow there is the right time. There is the right time to unleash and birth those demons and allow them their space. And I just know that for myself, having had so many demons, and it took me many years of trying to repress them because I wasn't ready. My coping mechanisms, I didn't have them. I wasn't ready to deal with them. And then when the time came, I could release them and also like to hold them in my full being, hold my demons in my full being. Like they are a part of me. And I can be like that weird, crazy demon thing. Like I have a certain pride around it now. Like, yeah, like this is a part of me and my whole being. And I've, recently been allowed to birth them and have them really walk alongside me. And I don't repress them anymore. But I couldn't for many years I had to. I wasn't ready to face them. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing that you point out, and I think that will help a lot of people to not even be concerned, on some level with forcing something that isn't ready yet, which a
Mhm.
lot of people kind of do have suspicions about what those things might be, and they're just me it just it's a question of timing in a lot of cases. And sometimes we aren't ready, as you say. It's like having, I've heard about people who do like psychedelics, who really have done no other kind of soul search work before and just literally have their crowns blasted open, are given all this information, and they're really not able to integrate that. So the timing and the slow unfolding of our
Oh,
kind of,
crowning.
yeah, the credit slow crowning. Yes. So, Erin, I just want to, before we end this beautiful, my very first dialogue, my very first interview conversation on Mythic Mel, I want to just invite you to, if there's anything else that you want to impart about birth, about life, about death, about waking up, um, whatever's on your heart, to just share with people who might be struggling, who might be in contractions right now. What is some parting wisdom?
I think the parting wisdom is actually because what I've reflected on is like for myself is like what words of wisdom could I have told my younger self? And I actually try to share this now with my children because in some ways are like my younger self outside of my body. And probably the biggest one was just to trust myself more. Like I have had the deep wisdom in myself my whole life, my whole life. And I just, when I was younger, I didn't trust myself. And so I tried it, like when I tell my children is like, just trust yourself. It may not be clear right now. Trust that it will become clear and that you actually don't need to wrangle. You don't need to fight as much as you think you need to fight. You don't need to force. Often what you do is you need patience. You need patience to allow for the slow crowning. And that's hard because we are often impatient in our modern world. So it's hard as a modern person, I think, to be patient. But yeah, I think if I wanted to impart some kind of final words of wisdom is to trust yourself and know you have this deep knowing already and be patient with yourself, um, and allow what needs to happen become clear in time.
Beautiful. Um, so if I know that you may be hosting a retreat of some sort in Costa Rica next year. So I'm wondering if you can share about that, or we can always post it later on in the show notes. But if you have anything to share about that, that would be really interesting for people.
Wow, thank you for bringing this up. Yes, it's actually going to be in Mexico, which is a little bit easier for you to get to if you're a West Coaster. In Zihuatanejo, it's going to be with my friend and partner, Patty Broccoli, who is a somatic yoga teacher. And we are doing a retreat. It's going to be actually late January, so the 24th through the 31st of January, 2026. um, in Zihuatanejo, Mexico. And as I have more information, that's all sort of coming together right now. I will be happy to share that.
Wonderful. I will definitely share that with everybody on the Mythic Mel community and Awakening Airwaves. And I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So if anybody wants to connect with Éirinn and her partner and learn more about embodiment and the wisdom of the midwife, then you can always reach out to me and I'll get you connected to Éirinn and her work as she goes forward. So I think we'll end there now, Éirinn. We never could get off the phone when we were young, and it's hard to stop now, but like I'm going to honor the podcast world and not go on and on. And we get to continue our conversation after. But for now, thank you all for joining us on Mythic Mel. And thanks to Awakening Airwaves for hosting these beautiful conversations. So grateful for our friendship, Éirinn, as you know, and I always have chills about it, but I really feel blessed in my life to have a friend who I have journeyed with from the age of 11 now to the age of the new 11.
Mm.
And, I look forward to continuing these conversations and to someday doing a retreat with you as well. I think we're going to be doing that with this whole growing community. So I love you.
I love you. And I feel my whole energy body just like vibrating and like shining. And I love the lighting right now on my face. I feel like I'm glowing all over.
Yes, for anybody listening to the podcast and not the YouTube, Éirinn is glowing and she has a glowing sunshine scarf around her golden neck of her expression, and which she was using earlier to be miming her umbilical cord. So if you want to check out Éirinn miming crowning slowly and the umbilical cord, please check out the YouTube channel. But you didn't miss anything if you didn't see it. You got a lot out of the talking. But again, thank you all for joining us, and I'll see you soon on Mythic Mel.